Join us on a trip to Lisbon, Portugal. This cultural gem is full of great spots and enchanting places, including not to be missed day trips. If you've never been before, this is going to be a good way to check out the city. If you've been before, relive your favorite times and maybe find a few new spots. Join Bob Shots Travels as we hit Lisbon, Portugal. We're Bob and Linda Copeland from Atlanta, Georgia in the USA. And this is Bob Shots Travel. We travel the world and bring you along. I do a lot of pre-trip research to find the must-dos and the best spots, along with local recommendations, and share our first-hand experience. Let's get started on our trip to Lisbon. We kicked off our trip with a long layover in Montreal, with enough time to check out the city. They happened to be hosting a Formula One race. We booked a points flight through Air Canada and flew first class on Air Portugal, a great way to do the overnight trip to Europe. Air Portugal is also known as TAP. We enjoyed the wine and good food, arriving in Lisbon with a good night's rest. Welcome to Lisbon. Here we go. We took an inexpensive Uber to the Old Town, passing the grandstand set up for the St. Anthony's Day Parade. The cobbled roads can be a bit bumpy. Our $120 a night Airbnb was spacious, with good views in a cool part of town. Barrio Alto, the high neighborhood, a historic neighborhood with good bars and restaurants. Architecture and art mix with the tiled buildings. Decorative tile is a defining feature of Portugal, influenced by the geometric patterns of the Moors and the blue and white style of China. Public transportation on the funicular, a cross between a tram and an elevator, used to climb Lisbon's steep hills. At the top of the funicular, the Mirador of São Pedro de Alcântara, or St. Peter's. A mirador is a public park that's also an overlook, often with some sort of food and entertainment. Let's take a look at this vantage point above Lisbon. We took to the Lisbon lifestyle, frequently returning to the miradores to hang out. You can see all the way down to the river, with live music at many of the miradores, and in a mix of English and Portuguese. A tribute to the Carnation Revolution of 1974. The 25th of April Bridge, an iconic part of Lisbon, commemorating the revolution. A public art display near the river, with some interesting pieces. Praça do Comércio, a waterfront centerpiece of Lisbon, built after the earthquake of 1755 destroyed much of Lisbon. Arco da Rua Augusta, kind of a gateway to Lisbon. The cobbled sidewalks were a work of art. The Santa Justa lift, a public elevator to get to Barrio Alto, designed by a disciple of Gustave Eiffel, who was active in Portugal. Let's head to Praça de Luís de Camões, where many of the walking tours of Lisbon commence. The famed cable car 28 stops right there. The maritime history of Portugal is well represented, including in the stones at the park. In the 15th and 16th century, Portuguese sailors explored the world, creating colonies in places like India, China, and Brazil. We joined our so-called free walking tour for a 3-hour tour of Lisbon with an excellent guide, Pedro, starting with the surreal ruins of the Carmo convent, heavily damaged in the earthquake of 1755 and never rebuilt. Like a number of other places in Lisbon, it's right at the top of the Santa Justa lift. Some cool local artwork was available, capturing the spirit of Lisbon. Say hello to Linda. Flowering trees, bright-colored buildings, and painted tiles set the scene. Portugal's version of the changing of the guard, outside the former National Police headquarters, where the former dictators surrendered to revolutionaries, signaling the success of the Carnation Revolution. I highly recommend a walking tour as a great way to get to know Lisbon.
Dates back to the 19th century. We call it this type of architecture neo-Manuel line. Why? Because the original Manuel line is the bell tower, the Monastery of Jerónimos, from the 16th century. This one was inspired by those buildings.
This earthquake-damaged cathedral has been partially restored. The Castle of St. George overlooks the city. Pedro took us for pastéis de nata, an egg custard tart that's a Portuguese standard at Nata de Lisboa, right on Rua Augusta. The tour took us to the Alfama district, one of the oldest in Lisbon, predating the earthquake. Despite the many tourists, local residents go about their business. Someone got a little clever with the street sign. Alfama was decorated for the Festival of San Antonio, celebrated throughout June. Grilled sardines were the go-to food, peaking on June 13th, the day of San Antonio, a holiday in Lisbon. And the streets were prepared for a big-time party. We ended the tour at Mirador das Portas do Sol, the gateway to the sun. We relaxed and enjoyed the view over a couple of beers. This mural tells the history of Portugal, starting with the Phoenicians, the Romans, and then the Visigoths, and finally the Moors, before the founding of modern-day Portugal in the 12th century. What a great spot to enjoy the view. We took an Uber back to our Airbnb, checking out the view of Lisbon from our balcony. I pulled out the big lens to get the 24th of April bridge. Off to another Mirador to enjoy the sunset. The Mirador de Santa Catarina, or St. Catherine, where locals and tourists alike come out to enjoy the sunset.
Oh my gosh, look at that beautiful light and the Linda view.
Some fire dancing on the Miradora to entertain the crowd. We kept coming back to the Miradoras because they had such great vibes, with music and dancing for entertainment, and beer and wine and snacks with the view, not to mention some cool public art. We headed back to our apartment as the sun set over Lisbon, taking in the views of the Basilica Estrela as the sun sets. Back up the hill to the Mirador São Pedro, where we grabbed some pork sandwiches from the grill. The castle is very impressive at night. Good night, Lisbon. The next day, we headed off to the magical city of Sintra. We took a train and did it ourselves, but you can also book bus tours. One of the highlights is the Peña Palace, overlooking the Atlantic Ocean, and the impressive Castle of the Moors, built in the 10th century, when the Moors occupied most of Portugal and Spain. The palace was built in the 1840s, on the site of a former monastery by Ferdinand II. It contains multiple architectural styles, including a Moorish influence. Look out for a separate video of this Sintra visit, as there's so much more to see. Let's take the short walk from the Peña Palace to the Castle of the Moors, built to protect the surrounding area, as well as the sea route to Lisbon. The Moors lived here until 1147, when Sintra was handed over to Alfonso Henriques, the first king of Portugal. Following the conquest of Lisbon, we walked down into the town of Sintra for a great lunch at Salus, with good food in a nice courtyard setting. Our next stop was Quinta da Regalia, a somewhat whimsical castle built in the early 20th century. The grounds include a number of interesting elements, including the remarkable initiation well, reportedly home to secret ceremonies. It also includes a fantastic view of the Moorish castle from below. We returned to Lisbon with an Uber and then a train. We got back to Lisbon at a reasonable time and were looking forward to the Fado show that we were attending that night. We took the short walk from our Airbnb on a mix of stairs that go up and down, typical of Lisbon, returning to the Mirador Santa Catarina. It was hard to beat the views above the city and the bridge, with a relaxed vibe, including the outdoor cafe, Kiosk do Adamaster. You can order at the window or the waiters will serve you at the tables. Just grab a seat and relax with your beverage of choice with a view. In addition to the view of the bridge, you can see the sanctuary of Christ the King across the river. If you're looking to kill some time or just relax, especially around sunset, a Miradora is a great option in Lisbon. We passed the Bica Funicular on the way to the restaurant. There's Cable Car 28, known for giving you a good tour of Lisbon. On our way to Duque de Rua, where we had reservations for a Fado show. Consider a reservation for dinner and a Fado show, one of your nights in Lisbon. Fado is a uniquely Portuguese experience, with a melancholy vocalist joined with two guitars, a round Portuguese guitar and a standard acoustic guitar, originating in the Alfama district as odes to faraway sailors. Be sure to arrive on time. They won't let you in during the performance. Stop by for a drink to end the evening at Lev Lev Tapas Bar, a spot near our Airbnb. The next morning we enjoyed the views of Lisbon from our rooftop. This is the day that we checked out the historic district of Belém, a short train ride away. We walked down the hill to catch the train by the river, the cobblestone sidewalks providing their artistry. Passing the famous Pink Street, we'll spend some more time here later. We had breakfast at a cafe by the river and across from the train station. Christian Dior cable car was an unexpected sight. Feel free to bring your surfboard as the train goes past Belém to the beach. You catch the train at Cacais de Sodra, the same train as if you're heading to Cacais. The 15-minute train ride provides nice views along the river. Get your tickets at the kiosk before you leave. We walked down to the Monument of Discoveries. There are plenty of restaurants along the way.
Let's go there.
The monument built in 1940, celebrating Portugal's maritime tradition and the explorers who traveled the world, setting up colonies, trade routes, and spreading Christianity. Portugal is still a largely Catholic country. Lots of outdoor cafes are available to get something to eat with a view or something to go. A quick look at Jeronimo's Monastery. We'll see more later. Grab some typical Portuguese food or some sangria to go. Enjoy the river views. Back to the bridge.
Linda and I are walking towards Belém Tower. We took the subway over to Belém this morning, and we're having a good day here, enjoying our time in Portugal, taking in the sights of Lisbon.
First glance at Belém Tower. Belém, or Bethlehem Tower, 16th century fortification that served as a point of embarkation and disembarkation for Portuguese explorers and as a ceremonial gateway to Lisbon. The tower symbolizes Portuguese maritime and colonial power in modern Europe. Built during the height of the Portuguese Renaissance, it is emblematic of the manual-line Portuguese architectural style on the banks of the Tagus River near its mouth at the Atlantic. We checked out some street art. Street art and graffiti abound in Portugal. The Carnation Revolution is a common artistic theme outside St. Jeronimo's Monastery, where the tile holds references to former colonies like Macau. Another classic example of Portuguese Gothic manual-line style, erected in the early 1500s near the launch point of Vasco da Gama's first journey on the orders of Ferdinand I. Its construction funded by a yearly tax on the profits of the Portuguese India Armada. This was an era of immense wealth for Portugal, as their colonies were rich in resources, and the church was a prime recipient. Manuel I selected the religious order of Hieronymite monks to occupy the monastery, whose role was to pray for the king's eternal soul and to provide spiritual assistance to navigators and sailors who departed from the port of Restilo to discover lands around the world. The monks held up their end of the bargain for over 4 centuries, until 1833, when the religious orders were dissolved and the monastery was abandoned. In 1880, Vasco da Gama's remains and those of the poet Louis de Camões, who celebrated da Gama's first voyage in his 1572 epic poem, The Lusiad, were moved to newly carved tombs in the nave of the monastery's church, only a few meters away from the tombs of King Ferdinand I and John III, whom da Gama had served. In 1983, Jeronimo's Monastery was classified as a UNESCO World Heritage Site, along with the nearby Tower of Belém. A number of architects and sculptors worked on the monastery over its construction, mixing different architectural elements. It's a must-visit in Lisbon. The famous Pastéis de Belém opened in 1837, the original home of the pastel de nata. It's quite popular. We had lunch at a nice outdoor cafe, Belém de Ocho. We really enjoyed our meals. and the setting was nice as well. Cheers to a good meal and a morning in Belém. Next, we visited the National Coach Museum to see the impressively ornate royal coaches and the spiritual ancestor of the hood ornament. Coaches were usually created for special occasions, like the marriage of a Spanish princess to a Portuguese prince, with the coat of arms of Portugal and Spain painted on the door. Next, we visited the grounds of the Museum of Art, Architecture, and Technology along the Tagus River, with a distinct and impressive modern style. Let's say goodbye to Belém and take the train 2 stops back to its final stop. Scan your card and walk through. The ticket kiosks are right there. After exiting the station, we started the walk back towards our Airbnb, but not before a couple of stops, including the fantastic world of the Portuguese sardine, a showcase of the Portuguese fascination with sardines, lined with decorated, brightly colored sardine cans, a passport to Portuguese tinned fish to be presented to the world with a unique experience. Now it's off to the famed Pink Street, previously home to gambling dens, brothels, and seedy bars. Since 2013, it has become known as Pink Street, when an urban renewal project painted the pavement between the terraces, bars, and clubs in pink. It's now home to a number of bars and restaurants, and it's very lively at night. After I finished a beer, I headed back to the train station to exchange some money and saw this guy playing his didgeridoo, an Aboriginal Australian instrument. There are many people checking out the scene, including these 2 observant Muslim women. I wonder how the pictures turned out. These floating umbrellas make it a popular Instagram spot. His sardine party hat and her religious headwear made quite the juxtaposition. People were getting ready to celebrate St. Anthony's Day, and the parade later that night. Veils were popular accessories for women to celebrate the mass weddings that were held that evening. Some streets were closed down for the festivities, including Rue de Bica and the Bica Vernacular. Let's head back to our Airbnb. After a day of walking, the floor flights of stairs created an additional challenge. It did keep you in shape. Almost there. Time to head to the evening activities and celebrate St. Anthony's Day in style. Starting at the Mirador of São Pedro,
We needed the biggest, giantest beers we could possibly have.
where everyone was in a festive mood. We headed down the hill to catch the parade. We chose to walk instead of taking the vernacular. It was a full crowd scene, with everyone out to enjoy the parade, many with festive attire. I would have killed for a sardine hat to join in the fun.
All right, we are we're still in Barrio Alto, I think, but we just came down the hill, and this is where the parade route is, Avenue de Libertad, which is where the main parade for St. Anthony's Day, which is the biggest holiday in Lisbon, which we happen to be here for. Miss Linda is walking away, I'm not sure why. And if you can see, there's big crowds, people with festive outfits on, dudes with sardine hats, people with kids get married so that the women are wearing the veils.
Each neighborhood puts on its own production, with floats representing local landmarks. With the lucky couples picked by lottery for this free wedding ceremony, where they are celebrated by all, an annual tradition begun in the 1950s. After the parade, we returned to the São Pedro Mirador for some additional festivities. It felt like New Year's Eve or Mardi Gras, with everyone enjoying the festive atmosphere, with some live Portuguese pop music to celebrate. With the Mirador providing its stunning nighttime views.
Nice to meet you. I love your vlogs. 2 minutes 35, which is very good. And just enjoy Lisbon. Drink beers. It's very cheap. It's very nice. And just have fun.
All right, there you go.
Perfect.
Thank you, my friend.
We ended the evening at the Jam Club for some live music, just around the corner from our Airbnb. They took good care of us, including these free pastel de nata shots, a good facsimile of the original. The next morning was our day to head to the nearby coastal city of Cacais, a don't-miss day trip from Lisbon. We headed out for a late breakfast at Café di Marzano Vermeteria for an excellent meal, one of our favorite casual meals. The Eggs Benedict was sublime. We happened upon the Santa Justa lift as we headed to the train station and had to get a shot with the blue skies. We love checking out the many architectural details along the way. Back in the Plaza de Comercial, even more impressive with the sun shining. Let's get ready to hop the train, which hugs the shoreline of the Tagus River and the Atlantic Ocean. After about 40 minutes, you arrive in Cacais, a beautiful seaside village that's an easy getaway from Lisbon. Filled with great restaurants, cafes, and bars. I definitely recommend a day trip. Palm trees everywhere add to the beach feel. Choose one of the many cafes for a great meal. The wave-like pattern of the cobblestones represents the Atlantic Ocean waves. This bird lady with her parrots reflects the certain quirkiness of Cacais. And the San Antonio Day procession, which started at the fort, was over the top. Stay tuned for our deeper dive into our Cacais trip, as there's so much for this small town. Foot volleyball on the beach was a good watch. From the beach area, we headed to Boca do Inferno, a 20-minute walk. A somewhat surreal spot with impressive ocean cliffs. With an archway in the limestone cliffs. Definitely worth the visit if you're in Cacais. We passed some impressive houses on the way back into town and chose the seafood restaurant Maritimo for an excellent dinner in the relaxed outdoor setting. We took the train and then an Uber to head back to our Airbnb, stopping by the Jam Club for a little bit more fun. After spending time in Porto and the Algarve, we returned by train for a final night in Lisbon. Returning to the Orient Station, an architectural gem. For our final night, we stayed in the Alfama district in an Airbnb near the Tagus River. We spent the evening exploring the Alfama area Sausages, anyone? We came across the Church of Santo Estavo with another great view from its Miradora. I love this tiled house. We were looking to watch the Euro Cup soccer, so we saw these Netherlands fans and decided to follow them. This narrow alleyway with stairs was typical of Alfama. We passed this cool courtyard restaurant. Now we're getting close to the action. Came across the Alfama Grill and decided to eat here on the spur of the moment. I should have done a little research as it lived up to its 3.1 star Google rating. We sat next to this nice Aussie and American couple. The food wasn't particularly great, but we did enjoy the beer and wine. As is traditional, grilled sardines were the food of the day. The streets became more festive as the evening progressed.
And a beer for the road.
We grabbed a beer from a vendor to do more exploring of Alfama. We happened upon a bar that was playing live music, Típica de Alfama. The musician was from Goa, a former Portuguese colony in India. A group of students from a local music academy made an appearance. I was surprised that they knew the lyrics to this song. We got up early on our final day and caught an Uber to the airport. We enjoyed the top-notch street art along the way and hopped on our Air Portugal flight and enjoyed some final views of the Lisbon area and the Portuguese coast. A few tips for those from the States who haven't traveled to Europe recently. The euro and the US dollar are close to par, and the difference is really made up because the Europeans include their taxes and their prices. So think of it as 1-to-1 for now. Also, tips are not expected. Feel free to leave a little extra if you get good service. Hit that Bob Shop button on the left and join us for more of our travels around the world. Thanks for subscribing. Look out for videos from Porto and the Algarve coming soon, as well as Cacais and Sintra.